Today we're digging into one of history's great David versus Goliath stories, all the way from 1552. It's the story of a truly brutal siege that somehow, against all the odds, became this incredible cornerstone of Hungarian national identity, a symbol of just pure, heroic defiance.
Okay, so first things first, let's just set the stage with the raw numbers, because they're pretty staggering. On one side, you've got the mighty Ottoman Empire, rolling up with an army of maybe 40,000 soldiers. And on the other, the little castle of Eger, with just 2,300 defenders. That's a force about, 17 times bigger? The odds weren't just long, they were basically impossible. This one, single, desperate battle was so profound that it's been immortalized in art and literature for centuries. I mean, look at this. You can almost feel the chaos and the heroism in paintings like this one. This wasn't just some military fight. For Hungary, it became an emblem of patriotic duty, a foundational story they would tell for generations to come. Now, to really get why this siege was so extraordinary, you gotta understand who they were up against. We're talking about the Ottoman Empire at the absolute height of its power. Under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire was a practically unstoppable force. They had already crushed the Hungarian army back in 1526 at the Battle of Mohacs, a totally devastating blow. And by 1541, they were occupying the capital city of Buda. For decades, it just seemed, inevitable that the Ottomans would swallow up all of Hungary. So by the time the two massive Ottoman armies of Lords Ahmed and Ali joined forces in front of Eger in 1552, you can imagine the sense of dread. Christian forts had been falling one after another. So honestly, no one expected this small, remote castle to be any different. But you see, Eger wasn't just another castle. It was the key to what was left of Hungary. It was the strategic linchpin. It was holding the entire line. You can kind of see it here in the 16th century drawing. Eger stood as this critical defensive stronghold. It wasn't in a perfect spot, but it commanded the whole area. And more importantly, it stood directly in the path of the Ottoman advance. And the stakes? Oh, they were incredibly high. If Eger fell, Northern Hungary would be completely wide open. The Ottomans would get their hands on a wealthy region full of silver and gold mines. Plus, it would open up a whole new route to march on Vienna itself. Eger really was the last line of defense. And the man in charge of holding that line was István Dobó. And get this, his defenders were a motley crew of professional soldiers, local peasants, and even a few dozen women who decided to take up arms. This small, determined group was literally all that stood against that Ottoman juggernaut. What happened next was 39 days of just relentless, brutal, bloody fighting. The Siege of Eger was on. And to give you just a little sense of the intensity, nearly 12,000 cannonballs landed inside the fortress walls. The bombardment was nonstop, day and night. It was designed to crush not just their bodies, but their spirits too. But the defenders had a secret weapon, a young officer named Gergely Bornemissa. And his genius wasn't just leading men, it was explosives. He figured out ways to make gunpowder even deadlier. I mean, his creativity under that kind of pressure was just astounding. He came up with these primitive grenades and bombs. He even packed a giant watermill wheel with gunpowder to roll down into the Ottoman ranks. And by adding oil, sulfur, and flint, his weapons didn't just explode. They showered the enemy in fire. So the fighting was brutal, and it was up close. The Ottomans launched 5 huge assaults trying to storm the walls. But every single time, Dobó's leadership and Bornemissa's deadly inventions just threw them back in a storm of fire and steel. And then, disaster. The main storage tower, filled with 24 metric tons of black powder, exploded. It caused massive damage to the castle. It was a moment that absolutely could have broken them. But somehow, even with a giant hole in their defenses, they fought on. Their resilience was just unbelievable. So, how did they do it, right? How did this tiny force manage to beat a massive modern army? Well, the thing is, Hungarian bravery was only part of the story. The giant also stumbled. A whole bunch of failures started to cascade on the Ottoman side. For one, their two commanders, Pasha Ali and Pasha Ahmed, were basically fighting each other for control.
Then, the army ran out of cannonballs and gunpowder, and to top it all off, an early winter brought freezing rain, and with low rations, discontent spread like wildfire through the ranks.
So after 39 days, the Ottoman army just left. They withdrew, beaten and humiliated. They had suffered heavy casualties, while the Hungarians lost about a third of their forces. The defenders of Eger had done the impossible.
But the story, it doesn't end with the victory. Nope. This is where the battle stops being just a historical event and turns into an enduring national myth. And you know, the ironic thing is, the castle of Isger did eventually fall to the Ottomans in 1596, more than 40 years later. But by then, it didn't even matter. The physical walls could crumble, sure, but the legend of 1552 was already built out of something far, far stronger. The story of the siege was captured in song and poetry almost immediately, just 2 years after the battle. And over the centuries, it was retold in epic poems, and most famously in the 1899 historical novel Égri Csillagok, or Eclipse of the Crescent Moon, which really cemented the story for generations of Hungarians. And this brings us right back to that painting we saw at the start, the women of Eger. It shows the women of the castle fighting right alongside the men, which is this powerful symbol of a total national defense. This image helped make the siege a symbol of the superiority of a motivated, patriotic army fighting a foreign invader. So what is it that transforms a single battle into an enduring national legend? I mean, Hungary was an amazing victory for sure, but Hungary had other victories. The real question is why this one became immortal. It just goes to show you how a story of courage against absolutely impossible odds can come to define the very soul of a nation.